Fine Art. In today's video, I'm coming at you with another, almost like a case study interview situation, kind of like with Sandy, but we have Chasity here to tell her story of what she had gone through with her demonic haunting. So, yeah, so do you want to introduce yourself, who you are, stuff like that?
Sure. I'm Chasity. Live in North Carolina. I've been experiencing paranormal activity for most of my life. Pretty much, I study astrology. I also basically consider myself a psychic, maybe psychic medium, something that I'm working on. I try to really use my abilities to help others. And their pretty much hauntings or situations that involve spirit. And I am basically doing this today to inform and help people that may be going through some of the similar things, but don't know the signs of what to look for. And my hope by sharing my story will be that, you can identify this and learn how to protect yourself and cleanse your space and your body from, being attacked or having attacks or any type of scary paranormal supernatural experiences. So
Awesome. Yeah. So, you were telling me earlier, like I guess on Instagram, about, the stuff you had been going through and how it, like, I guess started from an early age. Did you want to talk about that? So, like, what happened to you? When did it start?
sure. So my whole life I had really a unconventional childhood. My mom always talked about experiences she had when she was a kid, and like the coincidences and the things that people experience. And now I don't really believe in coincidences anymore. I really feel that things happen at the right time for a reason. But back then there wasn't a lot of clarity. I'm an 80s baby. We grew up with out internet, without cell phones, so you experience life without Google's help. So when
Mhm.
looking into those things, we had unsolved mysteries and stuff like that. But really, she had abilities she never really tapped into, but I do think it runs in the family. And I think that's where maybe my abilities came from. Um, you know, we had weird things happen, but really, I didn't start experiencing any paranormal activity, I guess you could say, until I was about 12 years old. My family wasn't church going people. And, they just told me that Jesus was my savior, and I had to ask for forgiveness and, that kind of stuff. It was just like a couple one liners, so I really wasn't introduced to any type of religion or organized religion until I started getting like a group of friends in middle school. And one of my friends went to a Pentecostal holiness church, and I decided that, I wanted to learn more about it. I had attended with my grandmother a few times, and, I started going, and I wanted to learn more about, Jesus and God, because I always had a connection, you know, with that. I was the only child until I was 12 years old. I spent a lot of time by myself. Like I said, pre-internet time. So, counting stealing or, twiddling your hair, you were happy, you didn't have any distractions. So we ended up starting to go to a church, local church. Um, and, I don't know really how I feel about it, even looking back or then, like I knew I wanted a connection, but some of the stuff didn't resonate with me, and not necessarily in a negative way. But one of the activities that we did do that was a lot of fun was church camp. And this is where I ended up having my first true experience with spirit outside of any, in my opinion, negative influences. This is more of the start of the positive side. This truly, looking back, it took me 20 years to figure out after this experience what it meant. Thanks to spirit, I believe that spirit guided me and to help me understand it. But so we'd go for about 5 days to church camp, and it was my first year. And they telling you, you got to be saved and all that stuff. And which was, fine. If that works for you and that's your path to connection, there's nothing wrong with it. But sitting and listening to them, Pentecostal holiness, I will say this, if people don't know, they're the type of Christian religion that speak in tongues, fall out Holy Spirit and stuff. So they're like on the floor, and then it's almost like a trance, which fascinated me truly, because I was 12 years old. I'm like, what's going on? But I accepted it because my friends were accepting it, and I was wondering, like, why is this happening to people? Why are people speaking in another language? Stuff like that. But one of the things I will say before I elaborate on my experience was it was definitely very fear-based. It was led on fear, because there's a recording. You can look it up, more than likely. I'm sure it's on Google somewhere on the internet, where they dropped a microphone down into a large drilled hole. Ooh. And they recorded sounds of screams. Ooh. And my bullshit meter runs pretty heavy for most and seem right about that. Like, they played that for children from like the age of 7 to like 16 or 17 years old, and told us that this was hell, and if we didn't sins, like, it's crazy, thinking back on it. They scared us into wanting to believe. So that's what kind of stuck with me. And it put fear in me too, but I just didn't feel that was right. Something was like, nope, 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 nope. So that would probably lead into, like, one of the abilities that I've had my whole life is the gift of discernment, the gift of knowing, claircognizance. Like, I feel like that's been one of my strongest things, working in any situations and the industries I've worked in. But anyways, I was laying in bed one night. We were staying in cabins. There were 10 beds total, or 11 beds total. We had basically the leader of the cabin, so the older, chaperone, generally a teenager, early 20s. And then we had 10 campers, bunk beds, and then a couple of the beds were just individual. So my friend that I went to church camp with, she did not want to sleep in her bed that night. She's like, it's just too bumpy. It's just, I don't want to sleep here. Can I sleep with you? And I'm like, sure. We shared the bed many times and hanging out, doing sleepovers. So I didn't mind, I didn't have aches and pains like I do now being old. But so I was laying flat on my back, and she was laying on her side, facing away from me. And I was just laying there really taking in the day. And earlier that day, I had really, truly in my heart asked for Jesus to become a part of my life, whatever that I needed to be shown, or however I could accept it, because I truly wanted it. My childhood, like I said, was kind of unconventional. I went through a lot. I've seen a lot more than any child probably should. And, we had alcoholism and abuse and just a bunch of different things. I was kind of raised with the adults because my mom was younger, but I needed something to feel better. I needed something that I could latch on to, basically. And I was laying flat in bed, and all of a sudden, in my mind's eye, this is the first time I feel like my third eye kind of activated. I started seeing a door, like an oval door that was made out of wooden planks, and it had a cast iron metal holding it together. It was an oval, and this door opened, and I kind of flew through it. Everything else was black. And all of a sudden, I'm in the cabin that I'm in, and I'm not asleep. Like, I might have been in what we would consider a meditative state, but I know for a fact I wasn't asleep. So when I'm like, what's going on? Because I never heard of anything like astral travel or anything like that. Like I said, so I'm in the cabin. I'm on the bottom bunk, matter of fact, and like there's a light. It was pitch dark in there, mind you. Like in reality, I guess you could say, or in our present world. But when I opened my eyes, I saw light emanating from the other side of the cabin in the empty bed. And all of a sudden, I felt my body start to basically do this, raise up, like, And it was a little frightening. I'm like, what is going on? So I start to raise up. I'm not in control at all at this point of what's going on, but I consciously know that I'm still laying flat in bed and awake. And
Yeah.
I raise up, my head starts to turn, and I look over into the empty bunk, and there is this huge ball of glowing light. Um, and as I get up a little further over, because I could see my friend laying next to me as well,
Mhm.
like the silhouette, and there's a man in a white robe, brown hair, wavy hair, um, not completely, I'd say, like Caucasian, but tanner skin. And simultaneously, he is raising up with me towards this light. When I see the man that honestly resembled, what we would consider Jesus to look like,
Mhm.
that time I freaked out and I opened my eyes, and I was still laying flat in the bed. And it was pitch black, and I closed my eyes again and I was back there. So, knowing what I know now, I really feel like that day when I asked Jesus to basically walk with me, I
Mhm.
feel like I had an experience where he came to me and was showing me something. I didn't understand none of it. What was this big ball glowing light? Why was there a man that looked like Jesus in my cabin? And now it was like, I wasn't there, but I was there. So that was the first significant experience that I had. Took me, years. I contemplated it for years, but it really opened my mind up to other things.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, moving forward, I found an astrology book. So jumping a little forward, I guess you could say, excuse me. Um, I found an astrology book after all that. I didn't know anything about it. And I started reading it too when I was 12, which opened up my mind to a whole nother world. I actually learned how to cast my own natal chart. I didn't get into transits or anything. And so it was already kind of inbred in me.
Mhm.
Later that year, still occasionally going to church, but starting to not feel as attached to it as I was before, but still had, the connection. Me and my friend, another friend of mine, we decided to do something really stupid. Looking back on it,
Mhm.
um, we decided to play with like a Ouija board from the 1970s.
Oof.
I honestly wasn't sure that it would work at that point in my life. I told her, I'm like, I don't believe this stuff. Like I kind of do, but nothing's going to happen. It's fine. Well, she also went to church her whole life. She identified as a Christian. She's like, no, it really does work. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll find out. Start playing with the Ouija board, and it worked like immediately. Um, Not knowing the repercussions of it, uh,
Mhm.
ended up basically connecting or contacting with a spirit or multiple spirits. I think we did it about 3 times. Asked all kinds of questions that me and her wouldn't know, like, what's your social security number? I know I wasn't moving it. It would yeah, it would like tell me my social security number. It would tell me things that were super personal, things that you wouldn't know. Little did I know then that that is one of the signs of it being a very dark entity. Um,
Mhm.
so, the last question, we asked a multitude of questions. Like I asked, what was the name of the man I was going to marry? He didn't tell me, but it started with an A. And I was like, oh, well, thanks, But the last question we asked, like the last time we used it, was, what's your name? Generally people ask that first. This is the last question
Mhm.
we asked. Um, it started to spell out Jesus, and we freaked out, and we closed the board every time.
Mhm.
But, I think that was the point in my life outside of any type of, things that happened in my past associated with my parents and stuff, because I always feel like something was always lurking behind. But this was the time that, I feel like me and her both actually opened up a portal.
Mhm.
Um, and that's something I truly regret, because for the next few years, we really did a lot of changes happen. We were right in the middle of puberty. So, I mean, they say that that's a very active time for energy
Mhm.
and to be able to connect. So that is like the prime time something could attach to you.
Mhm.
Um, I was always pretty much a good kid. I made good grades. I stayed away for the most part, especially when I was, 12, 13, 14, 15, away from, alcohol, fun on the weekends or marijuana, whatever. But I started having really awful bouts of depression, anger, suicidal thoughts, attempted suicides that were failed because, like, I would, you know, get together what I was going to, do it with, and it would just disappear. A lot of problems at home still. It really, I think, had played a big part in that outside of what already was going on. So I don't know if that kind of activated more for me having my abilities already that I didn't understand. Um, I don't know if that activated like me actually seeing the darker side of spirit, or not necessarily spirit, but the darker side of things. So this went on for years. I was about 14 years old, and I went back to church with my friend, and I ended up meeting a boy, a significant. Um, it was a boy she had a crush on. His name was Anthony. And the first time that I seen him, sitting in the pew, light emanated off light like I saw. I basically had that vision, and I was like, "Whoa, what's going on?" So I didn't really know how to take that until about a year later when he asked for my phone number. I'm like 14, almost 15 years old, ready to start. Never really had a boyfriend before that. And ultimately, we started dating. Little did I know this would be my future husband. Very interesting that, that happened, correlating the situations. Pretty much, we started dating, things were great. I was happy. Didn't have as many issues with depression. Still had issues at home. But dating Anthony and being around his family and going up to his house, like, ended up opening up a whole new case, basket, whatever you want to call it, of activity. So I guess I'd start with being 15 years old. There's a road where he lived. So I lived in the county below him. He lived a county up, and it's more of a kind of rural county. I live in the city. He lives in the county and mountainous. Up there's a road called Payne Road. So it's like the road that everybody goes to when they're a teenager, and the kids are supposed to push you off the bridge and stuff like that. And we decided to go there, me and two of my girlfriends, and see what happened. So we went up to Payne Road. Nothing really happened. There is another story attached to that. So if anybody's interested, it's a good story. It's a Payne Road in Stokes County, North Carolina. Nothing really happened there, though. But when we come back, we hung out and chilled with the guys. I think there was 2 or 3 guys with us. So we started to all head home, me and my girlfriends. And my friend Jessica was driving. My friend Kelly was in the front seat. I was in the back seat. Basically, I had this just overwhelming feeling that something was telling our car. I thought I was losing my mind. I didn't say anything. I just sunk down, just sunk down in the seat, and I was like, hell no. Nope, nope, nope. But the thing is, we're like 3, 15, and 16-year-old girls not talking about just leaving a boy's house. We're all silent, like dead ass silent. And I just, just something off. Do you feel like something's in the car? And my friend Jessica said, Chasity, I just saw the blackest of black hanging off the back of the car. And I'm like, you're kidding me, right?
I
And she's
just
like,
got truth chills when you said that. And I got it when you were talking about your experience at the camp. I got those too.
That's significant then. And, I love, chills are good and bad at the same time. I just love the validation from spirit.
Yeah.
I really do. It helps, that's a good point to bring up. If you think you have those types of abilities, and you are speaking something of a download or information you've received and you get chills, that's your validation right there.
I've had them the entire time since you started.
That's crazy.
And I it's weird. My heat's on in the house, and I'm just like
You know,
crazy.
you might be picking that up off of me because of my nervous energy before. I think so, because you're pretty empathic, I believe.
Yeah, I'm just really shaky right now.
Well,
And
hopefully.
the vent is right here, so it's like shouldn't be cold, and I shouldn't be.
And the weird thing is finally mine has gone away. So that is very, very interesting to point out.
I have the habit of sucking everybody's whatever they have and bringing it to myself unintentionally. So,
Right. Oh, I
yeah.
understand that completely. Yeah, hopefully, it's nothing bad, because that's what I felt all day, like something was just waiting, but I'm not worried about it because I know we're protected. I know that spirit's got back. I mean, I love spirit. They help a lot. But I guess going back to the whole car telling thing, it didn't stop until we got home, which was about a 30-minute drive from where we were from. We thought maybe it was from Payne Road, like the whole mysterious Payne Road, but looking back on it now, after I reflected through this information, it wasn't, because this literally opened up a chapter in my life that lasted 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, well, approximately, maybe more like 15, but close enough.
Long enough.
Long enough. I continued to date Anthony. We were together actually for 14 years total, but eventually I ended up, let me make sure, let me check my notes, because I'm pretty sure I had to put it in order because it's so much. And I'm just telling everybody I'm looking at some notes I wrote down, because it's a lot of information that I've tried to compact into, like, but pretty much I continued to date Anthony. I went to his house more. He come saw me. He got his license, and I graduated early, living with my grandmother. When I was 16, I ended up moving out of my parents' house, and my grandmother had cancer and lung cancer. So I went to stay with her to help her out. I love her. She was like a second mom to me. She was very influential in my life. And I lived there for a year and a half. And eventually I ended up moving in with Anthony when I was 17, because I graduated, high school early. I just chose to do that. And that was part of like my plan, because I was going to go right into college and just knock it out. Because I was trying to get emancipated actually, but that didn't work out. So that was what ended up happening. In between the times, right before I moved in with Anthony, people would talk about their experiences at his house. And his parents lived there and he lived there. So he didn't live by himself, just to be clear. His friends would say, there's this black shadow thing running around, you'll see it. We'd sit outside and hang out and stuff, and do teenage shit. And one night I saw it. It was like a black figure, and it would dart, but it would vibrate as it and ran. Actually, that reminded me, one thing I did leave out about the entity that is the one I felt like that followed us home. This entity kind of surprised them one night. His cousin is the Billy Badass of the group, and we were talking about it, and he's like, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to call it out, because there was a little white house, abandoned house next door, so old that it had a well on its back porch. It's creepy as all. And like actually a Native American man moved in, and he would walk up and down the road at 3 a.m. and do chants and stuff, which was odd to them because, they were also Christian too for like 20 years. So they were like, wow. So they always assumed that, that house may have played a role in what was going on. His parents wouldn't accept it though, because they would, they're like, no, this ain't happening. But Anthony did. Yeah. And everybody else did, just not them. But they would find out though. They would find out whether they still accept it or not. But yeah, his cousin went next door, and he was greeted after he, was showing his ass calling it out, by about 9 foot tall black figure with red eyes.
Chills.
Needless to say, he hurried up and got back, and because they were sitting in the car and talking about it, and he ran and he didn't say a word, and normally he's a Leo. He's like very, he's going to express himself. And he didn't say a word. He knocked every one of the doors, and just sat there and wouldn't talk about it. And it took him a long time to talk about it. So, everybody's having experiences. I moved in, like I said, after I graduated, but part of the reason I moved in with Anthony was because his parents ended up having some relationship problems that were kind of odd. I'd known him for a few years and something was amiss. His mother seemed to be going through a nervous breakdown because of some events that happened, and his dad left the home. And I moved in because me and him both were working at UPS at the time. And I moved in to help out. We knew we were going to be together. We had been together at that point for 3 years, maybe. And excuse me, but something was amiss because she was starting to hallucinate. And that's very common with somebody having a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
But it was strange because there was a character she was hallucinating with, like she was working, and his name was Cedric Gray. She said Cedric Gray would come harass her at work. Cedric Gray was outside of the house. She would see a car ride by, or like a box truck, for example, ride by, and it was a sign to her that she needed to follow it. And she did one day. She followed it all the way to Concord, North Carolina from Stokes County. No cell phone, this was years ago. No way of getting information, finding out where she was, and somehow ended up 1 mile away from her sister's home in Concord, North Carolina. After I moved in, already knowing that there was something there, I got a little puppy and I made her a little kennel outside. We'd come home from work. I worked like second shift and it was super cold. And I went outside to get the little puppy, and the ground was frozen. So I heard footsteps coming towards me. I didn't see anything. And I had told Anthony, like, I need to get the puppy, come to the backyard, because I was already freaked out at this point. Come to the backyard and let me in. First, he didn't. I don't know what he did, but he waited. And they got closer and closer, and they charged me, and I couldn't see what it was. And then I heard, like, forgive the sound, but it sounded like this. Like, nope. Seen the ring. Hell no.
Yep, I just got the chills again.
Yeah. It was harassing me, and I freaked out, and I started beating on the door, in the back door. And his mother was already asleep. So it was like 11:30 at night, because we worked in the county in a city away. So we had to drive like 45 minutes to get there. And his mother answered the door. She was kind of out of it because, like I said, she was still having these mental issues that we thought at the time. But me and Anthony figured there was something going on a little more because of the coincidences and weird things happening. So later that week, I didn't tell her what happened, but later that week, I just felt kind of compelled to tell her. I was like, yeah, I was outside the other night and this happened. And she was acting kind of spacey, and she was, me and her were putting the dishes up, matter of fact. And like, she was Pentecostal holiness as well. I'm saying this for a reason. She ended up asking me, when I told her, well, what was the sound like, honey? And this woman's 5 foot tall. Like, I'm 5'7". I'm not super tall, but she, she's older. She's 5 foot tall. She's sweet as all. And, as intimidation wise, I wouldn't necessarily be intimidated by her. But that changed really fast, because as soon as I made that noise, she started screaming at me in another language. And what I considered at the time false tongue is something, that's a phrase that's used in their church, but I'm not sure if it was Latin or false tongue, but it's not a language she speaks. She only speaks English. Her stance, 5 foot tall, she grew. Her eyes sunk in and turned black. Her teeth, she snarled at me. I almost pissed myself. That's when I knew that it wasn't a nervous breakdown. She was possessed. And I lived.
Sorry to cut you off real quick, but I don't know why, but I feel like I'm gonna cry. I don't know why. I don't know why, but that's what I feel like. I'm gonna cry any second.
Yeah. And that was tough. Like, literally, Anthony was in the bathroom taking a piss, and I had dishes in my hand, and this little sweet old lady screams at me in another language, and her face starts changing shape, and she grows in stature, and I just run and scream and throw. I mean, it's kind of funny, but it's not. I throw the dishes on the couch, running through the house, and he's taking a piss, and I just go grab it. Because at this point, like, I'm just like, you know, why? What is going on?
Mm-hmm.
That's when I knew, you know, even though I didn't have as much knowledge as I do now, that's when I knew something was not right, and that she was literally under spiritual attack. Now, like I said, she had been in church for 20 years. She was weak and vulnerable. Her emotions were, you know, she wasn't in a good place. And with that being said, you know, throughout, one of the common themes you'll find out throughout this story is there were times that we would hear and see little things or see a dark shadow, but nothing like that. Excuse me. But it would definitely play off your weakness. It would play off your vulnerability. It would, if you were depressed, it would make you more depressed. It would make you say and do things that you don't know why you did. You know, she legitimately, I believe, was possessed. One thing that I do need to mention that's a part of the story that I've tried when I was kind of jotting notes down, that every time I've done it, like 3 times now to be prepared, I've left out every time, is Anthony had an older brother he was a half brother. And when he was a teenager, he practiced Satanism, and he would do rituals and stuff. And it's really weird because every time I would get this information out, I would leave it out for some reason, and I still did. And it's, you know, super significant, especially towards the end of my situation. But yeah, he went through a tough time with that, and actually around the age of 15, he was actually trying to be a preacher in a Pentecostal holiness church, and he really did try, like, to get his life back together. But he didn't like his mother. And, you know, looking back on the situation, it really made me wonder if he had done something to his family. Now, I don't know if that's all that it, you know, all it had to do with it was that.
The second you just said that, I got that chill. So I'm thinking he probably did.
Yeah. And he did it on the land next to where they lived, because there was woods in that old house, like, for a while. And Anthony, actually, when he was about 7 years old, or maybe a little older, went down in the woods where his brother would do his rituals, and swears up and down he saw 666 floating above the fire with his brother in, like, a meditative state. And among some other things. One of the things that Randy used to say that, you know, kind of creepy, is when he would go into these meditative states in his bedroom, he would sit on a black throne. And y'all, when I get to the end of this, you'll understand why this is significant and this mind-blowing stuff. But pretty much, his mother, all that happened, she actually ended up going to institution for a few days to get help, because her sister actually put her there. And then after she come out, she packed her things and moved in with her husband. It took her a while to get right. Like, she went back to church and got right with what she believes. And, you know, I've seen a lot of progress, but I have seen over the years, you know, her kind of slip back. And I truly think we all have abilities, but I truly think she has them and doesn't understand them, and is not willing to use her tools, you know, to help herself. And I think that actually leaves a doorway open when you're sensitive, you know, and don't understand. It can actually take more advantage of you. I don't know if you feel the same, but
yeah,
I really believe that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say the next, you know, I don't know, 3 years or so, I started changing my career. I went to college. Still living with Anthony, you know, we're together. My grandmother passed away of cancer. It ended up migrating to her brain. They actually messed up her scans and read the wrong scans. And 6 months later, she went back and it had moved. She had went through chemo and everything. And
Oh my God.
it was very traumatic for me because she was
Mhm.
like my rock. She was the rock of the family. She took care
Mhm.
of everybody. And so, that kind of sent me into a super huge depression, life changing, to the point where, when I was a teenager, everybody drinks and smokes weed. Like I was doing those things. But when she passed away, um, my drinking really ticked up. Like I was never dependent on alcohol, but I sure enjoyed it. And I had it sometimes on a daily basis. This was before I had children, because I have children now. But one funny thing is, like, everybody that had experiences at this house, something happened to them. Like, for example, a little off subject, but it's important to say, mentioning death, Kelly, the girl that was in the front seat when the entity was towing her car, her mother, on her wedding night, went to Vegas and actually died in the hotel room.
What the fuck?
Probably 6 months after that. Now, is that related? I don't know. But it was a significant thing. And Jessica, the driver of the car, which I'm still friends with her today, like she's my bestie. We do have a really close special bond. We've been through some shit. Pretty much every time she would go up to that location and try to leave, something would happen to her car. It would break down, battery would die. She's flipped it a couple times. No, she flipped it once and wrecked it once. Like, but every time she try to leave that area, wasn't having it. Wasn't having it. So, that leads me to believe that was some of these incidences related to this entity that I didn't really understand, but I knew was pretty bad at the time. It's a lot on how, the question is, how did it start? It's just such a long period, and it's such a rich subject that, might be elaborating a little bit, but it's so important. It is so important that, if you're having any types of these experiences, to seek help. If you can't do it yourself, find somebody that can, because the depression and that's what these types of entities do. They cause disruptions. Like me and you, we were trying to set a time out. Everything just kind of didn't work out for us to be time and timely and audio. So it's pretty apparent, but the key is knowing how to deal with it. So after my grandmother passed away, getting back, I started drinking a lot, and the depression that comes with that. And alcohol is actually a portal to, like, if you become intoxicated, you actually lower your veil, your vibration, and it can allow things to mess with your head, or make things happen to you. So, needless to say, even though I was like moving robotically, I was going to school, I was going to work. I was moving through the motions of life, but I wasn't feeling life. Like, I lost part of myself. And this is when the visions at night started happening. Now, mind you, the whole time we're hearing noises, we're seeing black blobs in our room, like, but nothing as significant as what I've shared with you so far. But totally lost my place. Bear with me. After my grandmother died, still seeing all that stuff. The next, probably most significant thing is, me and Anthony decided to get married. We decided to try for a baby. Yes, I was very young. We had been together for 7 years. Like I said, still seeing things. And, this is probably one of the hardest things for me to talk about. Trigger warning. It was after I gave birth to my daughter. Me and Anthony's relationship also was suffering. Had things that happened years ago that we could never kind of move past. And, like, he was changing. He wasn't himself. Like, he wasn't saying things that he normally would say. He was a lot more cold to me, which made me withdraw. And I had slowed down on the drinking because I quit all that when I was pregnant. So, I stopped goodness. I was trying to get my body back. I was riding my bike, and pretty much I heard a gunshot. And I was 22 when this happened. My daughter was about 6 months old. And didn't think much of it, but I noticed that it come from my neighbor's house across the street. They were an older couple, I believe in their late 70s, maybe early 80s. The man, he fought in World War II. They built that house themselves, like so many years back, for $16,000 or something like that. So, I mean, they had been there forever. And I ended up still outside on my bike about 30 minutes later, and his wife, she couldn't get around very well. She had to walk with a walker. I heard these horrible, horrible screams. And my grandmother was living with us, actually. She moved up from Florida at this time, and she was an LPN. And we heard it, and we heard her calling his name and screaming it. And I was on my bike, and my nanny just instinctively took off running. And I got on the bike and I pedaled over there. And she was at the door, had built a ramp for her recently to get down, and she was trying to get outside. And when I approached the house in the backyard, I could see the man laying there. He was already sick. He was having problems breathing, so he was in his passing process at this time. They said his oxygen level was around 75%. So, he was really struggling at that point, which, can make people do crazy things. But, nanny run right to him because she had medical experience. I'm like, I was like, you go. I don't know what I'm doing there. That's you. That's all you. And I got the lady and I said, come on, let's go back inside. I actually, nanny, she had the phone in her hand and she gave it to my grandmother, and we called 911. So he's laying out beside of a tree in his backyard. I could clearly tell, like, I instinctively knew the man was gone. It looked like he just fell down. We wasn't thinking anything of it. And it's hard. But my nanny did 120 chest compressions on him before she saw the gun. And I had to hold his wife because she was on one line and one phone, and my grandmother was on the other. And then I heard my grandma say, there's a weapon here. It was a small weapon, and that would be why, she didn't see it, because smaller caliber weapons aren't as explosive, I guess I could say it that way. So it wasn't very apparent for anybody that may be wondering, well, how did you not know? Well, it wasn't very apparent. And unfortunately, to keep that woman from trying to go outside, see that, and hurt herself, I had to go out there at some point and give nanny something. I can't even remember. And I saw it, and I was already like suffering still through like postpartum depression and dealing with relationship problems. But, seeing something like that is traumatizing. I know people see much worse every day, but when it's your neighbor you've known for 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
The woman, I'm literally holding her and just, rubbing her shoulder and telling her it's okay. But in my mind, I'm asking why would you do this? But, I knew he was sick, and he was tired, and I get all that, but it was almost like my abilities kicked in through I guess, the emotion surrounding it, because the air in that house was so thick. I could taste it. I could smell it. It wasn't like perfume. It wasn't anything like that. It was literally something like I've never experienced before. I felt the air in my lungs like it was just so thick. And I just told her, everything's going to be okay. And she's asking why at this point. And it just came to me like things. I would just heard I was tired. I was sick. I didn't want to fight anymore. And being in an emotional state, I told her that, and I kind of regret it. But then it upset her even more, and I didn't mean to. And I said, I'm sorry. I don't, I don't know why I said that. So I just played it off, but I heard it. And, the paramedics came, firefighters came. I'm in a daze. Me and my grandma both are at this point. And, I still had fresh wounds about losing my grandmother too and stuff of the such. But I walked out of the house, and I literally, the air, I still tasted it, and I was breathing it out as I was walking back across the street to my house. I don't explain that. And still to this day, I mean, I can throw out theories, but that's just something really strange. But what gets stranger, or what gets more terrifying, is, that area, I started to realize at that point, and I'd picked up on things from like my neighbors and stuff, that it wasn't just my house, it was the area.
Mm-hmm.
I go back, and this was, I had internet then, and I go back and I get on my computer, and I'm on MySpace. Hey, and
Had one too.
excuse me, but I was just mindlessly scrolling at that point, and the only thing in my mind was why. I kept asking. I mean, it was almost like I was chanting it in my head, and I couldn't stop. My grandmother was outside. We smoked outside. Well, I didn't smoke then, but she did. She smoked like a freight train, and she was in nervous wreck. And she was outside smoking, and my husband was holding my 6-month-old daughter, and I was sitting at the computer desk, and why going through my head. And in my left ear, loud, I hear like a struggling to breathe, or something like that. And I look back wide-eyed at my husband, and he's already like wide-eyed. And I'm like, was that you? And I knew it wasn't, but it's that point of you have to ask, because you just been through some shit.
Mm-hmm.
And he said no. And I knew it wasn't my 6-year-old or 6-month-old daughter. And that changed, that moment right there, even after seeing the things that I've saw, and that right there changed my mindset, changed my life, and really affected me in positive and very negative ways. Looking back, to get answers on that, was it the old man telling me that he couldn't breathe? Was it his spirit? Was it his spirit in that house that was so thick? And everything inside of me says no, it wasn't. I believe it was the entity mocking the old man to mock me.
You said that you heard that sound earlier when you, I guess, with your husband's mother.
Yeah, and it was different, because that was in like, to be comparative, like that was more like the grudge sound.
Okay.
Like, but it's similar. You're right. It is similar. I'm not going to say it's not, but it was a little different. And, I don't know. Normally I can get validation on things pretty easy, but this is something, I guess it was so traumatic that I have a hard time, like, asking spirit, like, for validation. And I haven't tried to touch that subject, because of the trauma and stuff. So, but I have recently, and like within the last couple of days before this, and I really don't feel like it was him.
Yeah, I just got the truth chills just now, and when I was going back asking if it could have been that same sound, it's that same entity for sure. I don't even have a question, because I just got that. Oh, they got that. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome that you can, we can help validate each other, because,
Mm-hmm.
the more validation you have, it's not necessarily proof for anybody else. It's proof
Mm-hmm.
for you. It's proof
Yeah.
that you need as an individual with abilities. And that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's been a little lengthy of my start, but
You're fine. Keep going.
I know it's a lot, but shit kind of got to be a blur after that. Like, I wasn't happy. I was really sad and depressed, and life had changed so much for me because, I was 21 years old, and then I ended up getting pregnant and, having to be a mother for the first time. And, I don't regret it. Don't get me wrong, but it's hard. Like it really is a hard transition, especially being so young. Like, and I know it was meant to happen. Yeah. Me and Anthony were young when we decided to get married and have kids, but I wouldn't change it for the world. And I know that, my daughter's supposed to be here. So just to say that,
Mhm.
but I decided that day that life was too short to be miserable, and that if something didn't change with the way that mine and his relationship was going and the way that I was being treated,
Mhm.
which I won't speak very much on, but I'll say that it wasn't very nice, and kind of the like hateful words, like kind of verbal abuse that didn't happen, before a certain time. But um, I decided that I was going to leave. And I was 22. This was in April. I turned 23 in May at the end of the month. And that was a significant birthday for me. Without giving out too many personal details, I ended up receiving a part of my inheritance that my grandmother left me, which gave me financial stability, at least enough to be able to get out of there. Not only was I miserable in my relationship, I loved my husband and I was still in love with him, but it was just, I couldn't do it anymore. And I had not been single since I was like 14, 15 years old at this point. Um, I got my own apartment and I didn't get to see my daughter every day. And I started drinking again. It got bad. I had a nest egg of money, so I didn't have to work for like 6 months. And I spent like 15 hours in bed, just not myself. Because I considered myself a hard worker. I would hold 3 jobs in college. Like, I had goals, I had dreams. Like, I'm not a person that sits around and waits for shit to happen. But at that point in my life, I couldn't function anymore. And I was so confused and blinded by the things that happened. Like, I couldn't see. It was definitely, I don't ever think I was possessed, but I do know for a fact that I was influenced and definitely oppressed. So I can't say that I was, but I can say that definitely was a big part of it. I did spend time out of work, and have all that happen. I had a roommate, which actually gets Jerry Springer a little bit, y'all, but he's my roommate, strictly platonic. My best friend V, which is now my fiance. This was 11 years ago. He moved in with me because I didn't feel safe, because I'd never been on my own, and he wanted to get down into Winston because, there wasn't much opportunity from where he was from to get a job. And, even though it was some of the darker times in my life and I didn't get to be with my daughter every day, I still got to do some things that I'll never regret, like take my road trip around the United States. Like, I had felt this immense urge to flee, to get away. Like, that's all I wanted to do. And I had to make a decision. And I knew I was going to be gone for like 3 weeks. And I had to make that decision to leave my daughter too in the care. And she was well taken care of. That wasn't a problem. But it's still hard as a mother when, she's like 6 months to a year old. They need you. So I felt selfish for doing it, but I'm glad I did, because it gave me different perceptions or perspectives and clarity and perception. And basically, that word in general is so misunderstood that if people took the time to understand what that word really meant and to understand everybody else's perception, the world would be a lot better place. It's very important. It's a word that spirit has drilled into my head. I don't know if it's significant just for me. It can't be. I mean, it's just so important. While I said it, I figured I'd say that too. But ultimately, I ended up getting back with my ex-husband. I did it because I did love him still. It was the hardest time of my life. But stuff wasn't ever the same. And I had to go back to that house. And he did not want to be in the apartment because, he went through a whole emotional thing too. It wasn't like he just said, all right, bye. No, he was like stalking me and super emotional. And like, you could tell the entity, I could tell was messing with him, at that point. But my mind's so cluttered. It's like, if you ever get this feeling of like something like just fog sitting on your head, know that that's time, time to cleanse yourself.
That's what happened when I had my demonic haunting. I would try to meditate and I couldn't. Like, I would try and it would try to get me to like focus on other shit so I'd forget about it, or like I would sit down and meditate and it would just feel like I'm in a black space.
Yep. Exactly. You're exactly right. And there's another sign, to look out for, folks. If you have that cloudy mind and, you feel something's not right, trust your gut, trust your intuition. And if you can't figure out how to help yourself, again, please reach out for help, because you don't want to live years of your life like that. Because I did. And even though I was successful in the things that I did in my life, like, for the most part, like I did what I was supposed to do. I graduated college. I met the boy. I got married. I had the baby. That's not necessarily the right thing to do, but that's what you're taught by society. So that was really weighing on me at this point. But we got back together and we decided to get the fuck out of that house. Pretty much. We were hoping that things would be much better. Within about 6 months, the housing market was like way down. This was in 2011. So we were blessed to find a home, a nice home. And I was actually expecting again. So after I got back with my husband, about 2 months later, we ended up becoming pregnant with our second child, which is my son. I love my kids. Man, they ground me. They give me drive to do what I have to do. So we move out. Finally, we're like, yay, we're free. Things are much better. But at this point, I'm still drinking, not like I was, but a little tidbit about my career I had chose. I was a bartender, very interested in brewing beer at the time, very interested in opening my own brewery, went, and educated myself on, how to brew beer at Appalachian State University, like worked in breweries, like I involved it in my life. So not only, and I mean, I don't consider that a bad thing, but with what I was going through, it might not have been the best, but I was still really good at it. And I was, successful at that job. And whether I was working in the back of the brewery, helping like, keg the beer and being around the brewing, or in the front of house, it just felt right. It felt like something I needed to do. Like for 9 years of my life, I planned on doing that. But it didn't work out that way. And it wasn't supposed to, which is great. And, look, it took me a long time to get over that, though, emotionally. But we got in this house, and the first night we were here, we didn't have anything. I was like, I don't want to go back. I'm not sleeping another night there. So we're laying in the middle of the living room floor on an air mattress, and we're like, getting ready to go sleep. Everything's cool. We're like, we're done. The sink cuts on in the kitchen just a little bit. And we just look at each other with those big wide eyes like we've done on numerous occasions. And yep, we're like, here we go. And, we were like, no, not this time, but we were prepared. So I don't know for a fact. Now, this is where it gets kind of fuzzy and, nothing super significant happens, because one thing that happens when you have abilities or you move locations, like especially if you have abilities, like you don't always have them activated until you consciously activate them, because there's certain times in your life where you have to focus on different things. So for me, it was my career. It was my children. My husband, he had been working for UPS. He still worked for him. And, I was doing my brewery job I really, really enjoyed, but he was working part-time until he got the driving position for one of the trucks. And that required me to quit. And I still wasn't really working with my intuition or working with spirit. or knew anything about it. Never like occurred to me to like, hey, look it up. I always just watch ghost shows, fascinated completely with the paranormal, but trying to find answers, but just not in the right way. I say it's the wrong way, but like not thinking like, hey, why don't you Google this? It just, maybe it's just because I'm an 80s baby and we didn't have internet. I don't know, but it wasn't meant to be. So, but that really sent me into another spiral of depression and drinking. Like I battled that, my whole life. Like I said, I was never dependent. I never had to wake up and have a beer, but it was a stress relief, and anxiety relief, and helped me relieve like post-traumatic stress issues. So that didn't work out too well. And that pretty much, I was about 26, 27 when that happened. I know I skipped a few years, but like I said, life got busy. It wasn't really, still saw stuff, just nothing crazy. But that point like sent me in such a bad depression, and I was unhappy, and I was sitting home by myself all day, and with my kids, which I was thankful for. Like, I don't want to be unthankful, but it wasn't me. Like, I go out, I work, I was physical, I did everything, but it signified the end of our relationship. So we broke up in 2015, finally for good. And it's been 7 years almost, but when I left, I, was still dealing with all those emotions, but things did get better when me and Anthony separated. And I can't help but think, now, granted, I'll always love my ex-husband, but I was not in love with him anymore. And he wasn't me either. At least that's what he said. And I can't deny that this entity played a role in ruining my marriage. My daughter was 5 years old and my son was 3. He wouldn't leave the home, and he had to work every day. And you probably know, like, UPS folks, they work long hours, like 12 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to keep the house, and I was tired of fighting, so I left. And we didn't have the best accommodations, but we ended up managing. Ended up moving in with V, so we became roommates again. And after a couple months, like, we ended up having, a cosmic pool. Now, granted, me and Anthony had been separated since February. Me and V moved in together about June, and we're roommates. And within 2 months or so, started, you've known somebody for 17 years, it's your best friend, things happen. It's a big risk, like, to do that. And looking back on it, it does cause some type of guilt and shame for some people, but how can you justify something like that? But at the same time, though, it wasn't anything like malicious intent. It was a cosmic pull. Like, we both felt like energy, and not just like your lustful energy. Like, we were meant to be together. 2 months after we started dating, I ended up pregnant with my 3rd child, and that's Ivy. So things kind of chilled out with the whole spirit stuff, almost to the end of that. Really nothing super significant, except we both had emotional baggages from past relationships. So I truly feel like if you hold on to emotional baggage, any parts of that negativity or anything that influenced you, even your own negativity, like, it's not just all about demonic, or you have all kinds of negative entities. You have all kinds of negative energies that you carry that can actually manifest into separate things. So I don't feel like that's said enough in this this situation, or not necessarily situation, but in the world of spirit. It's not, a lot of people focus on demon hauntings and all that, but they're rare. They're not rare. They're not as common as other types. So keep that in mind. Just because you're having paranormal experiences, don't automatically jump to demon. It's not always that. It's a process of elimination. But that's where you need somebody that, if you're not comfortable, like I said, again, get help. That's the most important thing. So, we go through everything. 3 years later, down the road, I was 28 or 29. I was 29 when I had Ivy. And Anthony had moved on. At this point, he was dating a girl, and I am now, at this point, 32 years old. So I guess to answer your question, when did I know it was a demon for sure? Would be finally now at 32.
Okay.
I knew it was with his mother, but I wasn't sure. Like I wasn't sure. The girl he was dating was not necessarily not a good person. She had her own demons, I guess you could say, in that term. Um, she was going through a lot. She had a lot of problems. And Anthony was doing his, 7 to 7 routine with UPS, going strong, made his money, doing his thing. And ended up his brother shows back up. He's kind of estranged from his brother, off and on relationship. His brother shows back up and moves in with him and her. So she's there most of the time, and his brother's living there. Things go that way for about 6 months. He's going through all kinds of craziness with her, and my kids are going over there on the weekends, and it causes a lot of tension with me and him, and things that she does in her free time or her actions, not very child friendly, I guess you could say. And Anthony starts to slip a little bit. Like his stress level gets really high, and stuff's going on with his brother. They're both milking him dry of money. Like, neither one of them worked a job. And Anthony's a kind person. Like, in his family and somebody he cares about, he'll take care of you. He has his own ways, but Anthony has a good heart. And him and his brother got into it. His brother moved out. It was nasty. And not long after the stress and everything, Anthony started experiencing paranormal activity. So I know it's been a little bit since I mentioned, but remember his brother used to practice Satanism.
Mm-hmm.
There was a resurgence.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how and when I knew it was something demonic. That was my validation I needed.
You just got the chills.
Now, was it the exact same entity? I still struggle with that, but I'm going to say yes and no, because I truly feel that the demon that I think it was had the minions. They had,
The Legion, usually, yeah. They're minion demons.
And so was all of it just this one entity? No. But I don't know if his brother still practiced that, but I care for Randy. Like, isn't, I've been around Randy, I care about him, but whatever he did has never quite got away from him, because he has been an alcoholic for a long time. So that was like his vice, and that's what he got from it. And Anthony started having problems, and the stress happening, and him and his girlfriend breaking up. And, I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't have something attached to her. And it was actually one of my first, this is when my abilities really kicked into overdrive. My children were involved, in the situation with Anthony, and that mama bear protective part of me kicked in completely. I actually picked up on her having something attached to her as well, because, doesn't necessarily have to be a demon. A lot of people, more so than not, have something around them most of the time, whether you know it or not. That's another thing to know, good or bad. But I know she did. And then when Randy left, Anthony started, and I started seeing his pattern slip into what his mother experienced about 13 years prior. Yeah. So you know where I'm going with this, probably. I started, so I found a psychic medium that we both know and appreciate, Melinda Lyons. I started watching her among other people, and other things, and really diving in and getting the experience and figuring it out. Like, it started coming to me like a download. This was right before the big C that everybody, changed everybody's life. The virus.
Oh, I'm like, wait a minute, what is that?
Yeah, I just didn't want to say it because, every once in a while people just have their videos completely deleted for saying the Z. So we're just going to avoid that word, but we can say the virus because it could be anything. But, y'all know what I mean. but there was a shift in consciousness too at that time. A lot of people will agree. There really was. And it just so happened this was actually happening then. And Anthony, I went to go pick up my kids. Anthony was having problems mentally, kind of being unrealistic, kind of living in a dreamy world. He is a Pisces, but this dream world was not normal, right?
Yeah.
So I went over there, and I had started to learn more things, like I said. And I was hearing, I felt something. I was starting to feel like maybe the empathy part of me, the empathic psychic part of me, and the clairsentient part, maybe. I don't know at that time, but I could feel it. It was in his room. And at this point, I had enough courage to be like, no, this ain't happening. You're not doing this again. My kids stay here. I'm not here to protect my kids. You're not doing this anymore. You're going to leave. So that's the mentality that I come at this entity with. It was like hiding in the closet. He had a walk-in closet in his bedroom. And Anthony was leaving. I don't know. It was late at night. Can't remember the situation, but it's because he had decided to move out. That's right, because of the stuff that was happening. And I told the entity it wasn't going to follow us and that it wasn't going to hurt anybody. And the bedroom or the closet, you just hear bam, 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 and the floors, bam, bam. It was pissed. I wasn't ready.
Having a temper tantrum in the closet.
It was mad because I figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
It's mad because I was my, spiritual connection. It was mad that it was being seen finally after so many years of having a feeding source and a point. Now, I'm not even going to say this entity was just from his brother. I think this entity may have gotten magnified by his brother's actions on the land because other people have had problems. So I will say that. But yeah, so it ended up following me home. And I started having more visions and dreams. I've always had like prophet-like dreams and detailed dreams, or traveling places, like not quite like astral travel like you experience, but more or less like the light worker or warrior side of me that is traveling in a group of people trying to help save people from the impending doom or stuff of that sort, if that makes sense. So I started seeing like in my mind's eye, not even dreaming. So that started happening more too. My clairvoyance started kicking back in, and I started seeing like snakes, a viper type snake. It would like come at me like that, in my mind's eye. And I don't always see color. I see black and gray. So folks, that's another sign. If you see things when you're laying in bed at night, like colors or pictures, generally that means you have a stronger connection with spirit, and sometimes that's not always just your imagination. So keep that in mind too. But yeah, I started seeing snakes any moment. Like me and V would be laying in the bed, and I would just feel like at any moment there would be a snake come up in between us. Keyword, in between us in bed. So it started playing on our relationship, the patterns that things Anthony used to do to me, to beat me down emotionally. It would prey on my abuse that I suffered as a child, and traumatic experiences. Started actually coming out for V. When I started on this journey, he wasn't as accepting. He thought that it was just going to bring in bad shit, and it kind of did. But ultimately, we got the win. But it took a while. It took a long while of learning how to protect myself. Praying, building a connection. Like, I've done a lot of work on myself. Like I said, there was a shift in consciousness. Also in astrology, like the first day that one thing I am passionate about, I said, is astrology. The day that the first news article leaked about a case of the virus in Washington, that was actually a astrological day that was known to cause issues. Like, it was foretold in astrology. And with that being said, I truly believe that astrology is like God's engine. I think astrology basically helps God just heard a scream outside. And I do have neighbors, but still, it's still a little creepy. Just saying.
Mm.
Next to the woods still too, but I'm not worried about it. I don't worry about things like that anymore. But pretty much, yeah, I think it's God's engine. I think it gives us the ability to, be who we are, and somehow it all works together. It's amazing, fascinating to me. But it took a while, and I started working with spirit and everything, and I ended up, this is the last part of it because it can get super detailed, but the last interesting part of it was, that's very significant, was a dream I had. I was being led by a male person in my dream. We were in like this old beater car, and we drove up to this school. It looked like an elementary or middle school from my area, but the school was dilapidated and it didn't have a roof, and like the land had started taking over. But we went in, and inside of each of the rooms was people. They looked normal, but these people I just knew had problems like severe depression, addiction, alcoholism, pedophiles. Like, I actually in this dream had somebody attack me in that way. And luckily at this point in time, I understood what was going on, and I was like, get off of me, don't touch me. But they were in each one of these classrooms. But when you open the door to the classrooms, it was black. Until I got to the cafeteria. So, we all eat in the cafeteria, but the doors were open and everything was so dilapidated, but the cafeteria was shiny, just crisp, shiny, but there was no chairs. It had it was old school cafeteria where you had like the doors with the metal, where you go in and get your food. It was beautiful. But in the middle, or kind of off to the side in the middle of this room, was a black throne. And if anybody remembers at this point,
Mm-hmm.
my brother used to when he was in a meditative state, he sat on a black throne. So did a few laps around this in my dream. I was being guided and told what was going on. There was an entity, I assume a spirit guide, or angel. That's something I still struggle with, is connecting with names. That actually happened for me the first time last weekend. So I'm super excited, but it had to be an angel. It had to be an angel to be able to be with me, or a very high vibrational spirit to be able to take me there. The second lap I made, there was a person sitting in the throne, and their body had started decomposing in this crystal, beautiful, clear floor. And I could see, I was standing in front of it, and I'm like, what's going on here? He's like, well, this is a 72-hour process. And I'm like, 72-hour? What does that mean, And then I walked back by the door, and I saw the separation, trigger warning, separation of fluids, very graphic. And, I woke up. Didn't correlate the whole black throne thing at that point in time until I talked to somebody later. But he's alcoholic, and he has lost so much weight. So much weight. And it's almost like he's wasting away.
Yeah.
And he actually, at that point, it's a sad situation. I don't want hate shown to him in any way. He actually, the crazy thing is too, is he moved out of Anthony's house and stayed with his ex-wife for a few days, and then got a tent in the woods next to the school house. So he was living in the woods next to the schoolhouse. I didn't know that either.
Wow.
Also, another thing I wasn't aware of that I had to look up, regrettably in a way, but educational purposes, was the process of decomposition and the color of the way things separate. I didn't know that. That's exactly what I saw. So I think it's validation. It might sound all this might sound crazy to some people, but that's okay. We're all different. We all see things differently, but I know this is my experience, and I know that what I'm getting is along the lines of it, because once I started having dreams about the viper kind of snake entity, it would actually come claw at me, in my mind's eye. and stuff like that. And had this dream about all this. It all started coming together, and I found a name that I feel comfortable with. I don't even know if I really want to share it, to be honest.
That's your judgment.
It's powerful.
Is it a demonic name? Oh, maybe don't. Just in case.
I don't want to say it, but I gave you enough information that you could figure it out.
Okay.
And I just, like you or anybody, if you want to look it up at your own risk. But when you do stuff like that, guys,
it's coming.
Be careful.
Usually, sometimes. Yeah. I actually was attacked last night, but I don't know if it was because I was trying to help somebody or if it was in relation to anything else.
Sorry, what was the experience? I'm like,
so like, I was trying to do, so it kind of started like 2 days, and it started out with like, 2 days ago I did a meditation, and I was trying to connect with Archangel Michael and Shiva because I was trying to get answers on something, and I couldn't get to Michael for whatever reason. And so I was trying to get to Shiva then because I'm like, okay, maybe like something's going on. But so then I was like, okay, maybe I can get to Shiva because he's usually like there in a pinch, like immediately I can get to him really fast. But towards the end, like no one was showing up, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on? And then I started to like almost black out in a way. But I got to the point where I'm like, I gave up, and I woke up because I had to go to the bathroom, take all my medications and stuff, and then I was like, okay, I'll try this again, and then I blacked out. Like I blacked out because when I go to bed, I always yeah, it was weird. So like I usually meditate right before bed. It's kind of like my safety thing. Like I'll go in my happy place, like to get, ready to sleep and stuff in case, because usually I do have astral experiences every night, right? Like as I sleep. So I try to do that. And then that's when I blacked out. And then it felt like a minute later, I woke up and it was like 9 or 10 hours later. And I was like, what the fuck? I missed my alarm.
Didn't feel well today. Didn't feel well today?
Yeah. So then yesterday, I tried to meditate again. And again, I wasn't getting like to my guides. And I was like, okay. And then I got later in the day, my demon warning, which is when I see 666. And I'm like, okay, I know something's coming. And so, you're right.
Yeah, I look up and to the left when I receive information. It's actually
okay.
a little trick.
I just want to make sure you're okay.
Yeah, I'm not rolling. Nothing's happening. No, but I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but no, it's actually just something you can do to connect with spirit. You connect through your right side of your brain. So if you look up and to the left, you'll get more clear messages.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I shall try that. So yeah, I got my 666 message, and I'm like, okay. So on the way home, I sometimes will just talk to my guides because I mean it was an hour and a half drive, so I'm just like something to do. But it was like, okay, well, I got this message, so can you guys be on standby? I think Shiva heard it. I'm pretty sure he did. And so yeah, so I get home, I get ready for meditation. I tried connecting with Michael again and I get nothing. And then Shiva, it's really patchy. And then fast forward, and then I try to go to sleep, but I do my meditation before bed because I do that every night. And this is where it starts. So I get a flash of the upside down pentagram, of course. And I see a certain demonic entity that is associated with it, of the goat nature, if you know what I mean. And
I've seen it in my face.
Yeah. But so I'm like, okay, shit's about to go down. And so I try to like astral project and get like battle ready, I call it, but like make sure I have my shit straight and I'm ready and I'm trying to get my shit together. And all of a sudden, and I don't know if it was him or like an entity like working for him, but I like, as my eyes are closed, and I'm using a blackout mask too because it helps me, like, because when I do my meditations and stuff, I have to have my eyes open, which is weird, but it has to be dark.
Right.
So, so
Understand.
I'm doing that, and I see it, and I see in black and white too, like 99% of the time, not
Yeah.
really in color unless it's like really, really vivid. But it those moments are not as like common. So I'm seeing in black and white, but that entity like pull me away, like takes my astral body and is taking me, and I'm like, oh fuck, this isn't good. And I'm like, okay, well, this isn't like, it's not good. Like, he's probably gonna take me to hell or something. I don't know, but I'm able to whip out my double-sided naginata thing, and I
Mhm.
break it in half, and I stab it in the face, which I was really proud of. But I'm just like, hey, like, Shiva, I need your help. And he does appear, thank God. Like, I don't know what I would have done. Like, I don't know if I could have fought it by myself, but so Shiva takes care of it, and he takes care of it and it's gone. And I'm fine for the rest of the night. I was able to do my astral realm things, like my astral projection stuff, and I was fine for the rest of the night. And then today, yeah, I started feeling like shit. But
Had an
um
interview.
yeah. So like I probably said this a bunch of times in my channel, but I had a hysterectomy and I don't have like a uterus and stuff, but it felt like I was having cramps like there, and I'm like, well, why do I have cramps? And sorry, I'm shaking. Like I don't know why, I'm just really shaky, but I was feeling this pain, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, why do I have pain there? Like, I don't have an organ there. So that's why I wasn't feeling well. I was having that pain. But it's gone now. I took a shit ton of Tylenol. But
Right.
yeah.
It very well could be, and like I'm listening to you, and I'm like seeing it as you
Yeah.
talk about it. Like I can visualize what you're saying, and very well could be from trying to help somebody. And I try to help. I've been helping people on a weekly basis, like maybe not necessarily more than I should. I just help them with like cleansing their home and like telling them,
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm not really getting into cases or anything, but I'm helping people. And sometimes I do have entities attack. But what you're telling me, like the whole like blackout thing, that happens or has happened to me when I've been pulled into dreams and like, the blackout situations, like
Mm-hmm.
what you're talking about, but not actual blackouts like in like you had.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also, too, like I've seen that same entity in my basement. Like I was in that meditative state at night. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden everything just turned on like without me trying, and my whole house I use my light energy to like scan my house. It sounds strange, but I use it to scan my home and like push out my light, and it does take a lot out of me sometimes, but when I feel the need to, I will. But this time I literally, like, my mind woke up and all of a sudden I had flashes of each room in my house, like big bright light flashes like of my own, and there he was literally directly under my bed in the basement.
Ew.
Something woke me up to that.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're describing, like I feel it might have something to do with this. That's just my gut feeling.
Okay.
I'm not trying to make it about me or anything.
No. Okay, that makes sense though.
Yeah, so but I don't have a lot of issues that I'm aware of out of that entity. More or less the one that is pretty much gone now. Not to change subject, and I'll just say it like this because I'm not
Mhm.
going to get into those details, but Anthony is still having problems.
I'm
Like
sure he is.
still to this day, like, but it's got worse. It's got better and worse. And
Mm.
I've done things to try to help him, but he's kind of blocked me off emotionally, and that doesn't help with what I'm trying to do. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so anyways, I meant to say that too. Like it's still an ongoing thing, just not here.
Mm-hmm. Well, when
But
you have somebody in your family, whether or not like you're not like if you're spending time with them, I mean the time that you spend obviously like can contribute to it. But even if you're not spending time, it's just by proxy, you still can be affected by that stuff.
yep, yep.
But that's interesting because I don't think you told me about it was that specific entity that you had an issue with.
Yeah, it's not the same. It's not the same as the Viper.
No, I know, but I'm saying, but I didn't know you had an issue at some point with that other one.
And I didn't even think about it. Like it just,
Mhm.
there's so much other stuff. Like I didn't even think about that. But that did happen to me one night. Like
Mhm.
especially when I was working on building up my light power, basically. Like
Mhm.
and doing it. That's when stuff was kind of rough. So I don't know the correlation, but
Yeah,
yeah,
because
it very well
the
could be. And
person.
your stomach hurting.
Yeah.
That's kind of what was going on with me this last week too, which is really weird. Now,
Wow. So
but
I didn't even know that. So
yeah, it's a little strange. I'm not saying I don't know for sure, but something's telling
yeah.
me. And we talked about this like a month ago or so when we were planning this that things were probably I told you things are probably gonna happen.
Yeah, and you know what? The person I was helping had a different demon bothering him. So it's not even the same. So okay, that makes sense. I was like, where did that one come from? Because the one that he was dealing with is the one with the and is,
I
starts
just
with an
feeling in my stomach,
mhm.
and that is a sign for me.
Yeah, but his demon was the one that's
With this out of nowhere.
yeah. Is it like uterus stuff? Because if it is,
Mm,
okay.
I
Well,
I felt like a shift. Like I feel like a shift change in my room right
mhm.
now in the room I'm in. And when I get that sick feeling, like every once in a while I will naturally, but this was like I
Ow.
feel pressure change. There's pressure
Wait,
change in my room.
I just got a pain on my right side. That's weird.
Is it at the base of your back down towards where your hip is in the center,
But in the front though for me.
in the front? Because I have
Yeah.
a lot of pain right there because I was diagnosed with scoliosis and degenerative disc when I was 25. So I was just wondering.
Well, it's funny though. Not funny that you have that, but
Yeah,
that when I have back pain, that's where it is. It's the bottom right
yeah.
there. Yeah. And I mean, I have a deformity in my hips, so like the pelvic, like they have specific like physical therapy for just pelvic floor and it's all connected and stuff. So for me, like I have that going on, but the pain I just felt in the front, it was weird because I don't know, it was just like that pain, like the stabby.
Stabby, yeah.
Yeah. And that's not the bladder pain I have. That's always in the dead center. This is like
Right.
over. Yeah. It's weird.
Yeah, that's mainly what I'll have happen to me these days. Like, psychically, every once in a while I'll have a nightmare. Like while I was actually dealing with this entity still before I was able to get it gone, at least out of my part. Like I truly feel like it's almost gone. Like you talk about it enough though, things like this are going to
It's
happen.
gonna come back, yeah.
Risk that I knew. And that's the risk people watching this video. Like, you start digging, like I've said before, it can recur. So, I mean, but I had a very vivid dream that I was sitting on my bed and V was sitting next to me and I started not to be able to breathe and I started to scream. Like I felt like blackouts. And that reminded me blackouts, like flashes. It would black out. And I went to scream and I couldn't. And I'm like, it couldn't say nothing. And I got up. I felt like I was going to hit the floor in my dream. Like I literally felt it, like I was going to faint in my dream. And I went to look in the mirror and my eyes, black smoke was coming out of my eyes and my mouth, just black, pure black. And it was trying to say like, oh, I'll take you if I want to. And then I had to fight
Mhm.
that off too. And I'm like, no, you're not. And
Mhm.
luckily I work with Archangel Michael too. And I have had issues over the past couple weeks connecting. Like I get certain like for validation I'll ask Archangel Michael to like flash a picture of angel wings in my mind's eye, and I haven't been able to get that as much, but I have asked like Jesus to walk beside of me because of I feel like Jesus is a guide, for people. He's a guide to ascension, and that's a whole nother subject talk about later. But I feel like he's the guide. He'll walk beside of you. He will guide you through these things. So but I have been able to connect with him since I feel personally that I connected with Jesus Christ that day when I was 12 years old, and that beautiful time of like blooming puberty. So I just sound put in the same sentence, but it's the truth. Like, but it's very weird you're having that happen. So I would definitely tonight do a little extra and, you know, and I will do the same. And mentioning protections, if you don't mind, unless you have any questions before.
No, that was literally my next question.
Good. So for folks, and if you made it this long through my story, thank you. You know, it means a lot if you did. You know, I'm not doing this for any other purpose besides purely, you know, letting other people know the signs. So protection wise, the first thing that I started with personally was crystals. Like, I became fascinated. I always collected stones. So the best crystals, I say two, I can't decide between the best two crystals for any beginner or anybody to have in their arsenal for protection is the black tourmaline.
Yep, and I always have mine too next to my computer.
Yeah, it's a lifesaver. Like, it really helps.
And
of course, the crystal quartz. So the black tourmaline absorbs the negative energy and transmutes it into positive energy. And then this is like for everything. This one is everything. So, and when it's good for literally everything. So, if you don't have a certain crystal for a chakra, if you're working with your chakras or you want to like cleanse your chakra, then you can use this in place of it and it'll still work. But the thing about crystal quartz being together with any stone is it amplifies the power of that stone or that metaphysical property. So that's why if you can't get this, at the very least, have one of these. And it doesn't even have to be a point. It just has to be crystal quartz. You know, it doesn't have to be nothing fancy, just something for protection, really. People ask me all the time, like, why do you feel like these work? Like, they're just stones. Well, you know, you have to sit with yourself and you have to sit with that stone and be able to be open and receptive to feeling energy. Because people that don't know anything about them, when I ask them to hold a stone, I say, tell me if you feel like a heating or a cooling or a pull or a push. And that is the way that, you know, you're going to know that you're feeling something from that stone. Also, something that I do in my jewelry business now is when somebody's looking through my bullet point stones that I just sell at my pop-ups, they get drawn to one. And I could recite, you know, a couple words. I still struggle remembering everything. I'm not a robot, I'm not perfect, but I do have Google. And so on my iPad, and I'm like, well, you know, you were drawn to that stone for a reason. So let me read off to you like the metaphysical benefits of it. And 99% of the people jaws like drop and they're like, oh, sold. And it's not a selling point. It's the point of showing them that they were drawn to that stone for a reason. So no, they've been around longer than us. I believe they're gifts from God to help assist us. Our creator, rather, like, you know, the creator energy, however you want to look at it, you know, all fine and dandy. And then I got this Mac Daddy at the last one. Oh my God, I love it. But I'm sorry, I had to show that one. And then amethyst is another super important one. It doesn't have to be like super pretty like this. It could be a shard of amethyst, you know, anything like that. And the last one these stones are particularly for people that are very intuitive or open, and they could be for anybody, but these are the stones you'd want to have. And then I've got a piece, if you can see it, of labradorite. So this is rough, and so this is another stone. All helps with like anxiety, connection. Like, you could trust me, it's just something. Look it up on Google, it's worth the shot. Then you always have your incense. So I have a plethora of incense now. I spent $15 at the gas station, and they're not the best quality incense, but I really dig it because they have like white sage and rainbow for like your chakras, and then frankincense and myrrh. So if you can't decide, frankincense and myrrh is probably the best when you're talking about like clearing negative energy. That's great. And then of course you have the sage. So I ran out of my regular sage bundles, so I had to get this fancy one to show. But everybody knows what sage is, but there's a particular way that you have to do that to your home. The thing about sage is, though, is it leaves a void. So sage cleanses out all energy. So with that being said, you need to have something to put back into your environment, because then you're just leaving an open space, which is great. It's fine. But as long as you're putting positive intentions back in, that's all you have to do is positive intent. But Palo Santo does the same thing as sage. Let's see it. But it has the positive intent within it. It's a sacred wood. And then I put particularly rose petals to reintroduce love, orange for energy, lavender for relaxation. You would think that it would kind of contradict itself, but it doesn't. I mean, it's a balance. Everything's a balance. That's good to have. And also, if you have any essential oils, like different types, you can get all types of essential oils for different things. But if all else fails, the last tool, besides obviously asking out, always first ask for help from spirit or divine the guidance, basically, archangels. The last tool in my arsenal, which might seem off-putting to some, or maybe not, I don't know, however you feel, but it is holy oil. When I'm having an attack that I can't push off myself, they're energetic attacks more these days. They affect parts of my body, like numbing or stabbing or something like that. Not as much as necessarily nightmares and stuff occasionally, but holy oil is the last thing that I do use. And I do put it on my chakra center. So you'd have to know, that's my recommendation. Or if it's really bad, you can put it on like intuitively where you feel. So protection wise, like tools that you can physically have, those are some that I recommend. And lastly, white candles. White candles are amazing. Like, you would think something so simple. All this is so simple. It's just really embracing it and doing it. That's it. It's just the taking it in and accepting it, and accepting that you can trust in the divine to guide you. That's the most important thing. Like, truly. There are books written about it, but there is no book written specifically for you. So ultimately, on my journey, what I've learned is that we are all one. We are all connected in this, in this earth, in the collective consciousness, and I've learned that it's super important to love each other, and super important to understand loving the word love and the word fear, because you can take almost every descriptive word or whatever and put it in one or the other categories. And wherever that word or the emotion identifying love or fear, if you find that you have more fear in your life, you can be, this is my theory and people agree with me, you can be more susceptible to these types of attacks. That's why I personally don't agree with certain organized religions teaching a fear-based, because they're literally teaching you the opposite of what you need. And what I've been told by spirit that God wants you to know is, love. That is the key. And it like I said, it sounds so simple, and people, they're like, these are big problems. It's just, how does this work? Because you believe. Your intentions is part of the best tools that you'll ever have in your life, your intentions and your intuition. And that's one thing that is not allowed enough these days. It is not, pushed enough these days with technology and stuff. I have nothing against technology or anything, but the advancements that we have, they're trying to put consciousness on a computer, because they don't realize that we already have our own magnificent realness, that it already exists. And a lot of things about the whole perception thing, you might disagree with somebody. You might disagree that, this is this or that is that, or you call God something else than I call it. But at the end of the day, it's just a word, and it all represents the same thing. So that's where the oneness comes in. There's no one religion. There's no one person of color, creed, sex, female, male, whatever you identify as. That doesn't exist on the other side. It does in certain aspects, but the whole point of being here is to have soul growth and to, take in your human experience, and don't let anything take that away from you.
So one thing that I used personally for my issue, so I've been burning sage a while, but I didn't know the whole it leaving the negative void thing, which makes sense as to why it like the entity would never really go away. But what I started doing was I would do my sage, but then I started on my own and without even researching it, I would burn my Palo Santo wood while also burning my dragon's blood candle at the same time. And I would do it for hours on a day, and I would do it every day,
Mm-hmm.
which is really expensive because those dragon blood candles are freaking expensive. But I mean, that's what worked for me.
That's great. And you brought up a good point about the burning candles. You can do it over times and processes. Or if someone can't afford those types of candles, but you still want to use them, the Dollar Tree or Dollar Store or Walmart has the big ones that are
They have
white.
dragon blood ones?
Oh no, the white candles, just white.
Oh.
Yeah, but
Okay.
dragon's blood, I don't think is talked about enough in spiritual protective like issues or whatnot. So that's yeah, I've actually just started learning that dragon's blood is protective too, and I found that really cool because you were the first person, like I've known about it, but you're the first person saying that you actually used it. So that's really cool. But yeah, people that may not be able to get a hold of that stuff, you can get just a big white candle or little ones. White candles work for everything, just like clear crystal quartz, the white and purifying. But no, dragon's blood candles and the incense and everything I've heard personally work great, and I would need to get me some because I want to try them out.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually got that advice from Melinda, so thank her for that. But now as we were doing this video, I don't know if this is relevant to you or anything, but I keep smelling bread, like something like the smell of bread, like cooking in the stove. And I don't cook bread, so to me it's just like, what the fuck? Sorry, where did that come from?
Yeah, how long ago did you start smelling it?
Probably since we started filming, like filming.
Well, I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but Nick brought this into me. Hold on, see if I can get it. It's not quite bread, but he brought this in about 30 minutes ago to me silently.
Yeah.
So maybe he was, I don't know, maybe he was cooking it. I don't know. That's weird. That is cool though. It seems like, when two empathic psychics get in a room, how many does it take to change a light bulb? None. I don't know, bad joke. But I mean, it's really cool to be able to do this and talk to you, as close as we can get face to face in person. And it's cool.
Like it does smell like, but I mean, you showed me the pizza, so now it's like suggested in my head. But yeah, I've been smelling bread the entire time. So I'm just like, my boyfriend's in the basement, sawing away if you can't hear that in the background. So it's like, no one's cooking anything.
What is he sawing on, if you don't mind me asking? What's he doing? Is he making like wood?
No, he was trying to fix his home theater system, and he went to get, I think, speakers and wire and stuff. So he's trying to like hook up a speaker system throughout the house.
That'd be awesome.
So he's sawing through the ceiling and stuff. And I'm just like, I tried texting him, and I was trying to do it like discreetly, saying, "You're too loud. I can hear it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard it. I thought I heard something one time, but I wasn't sure what it was. I didn't know if we were getting some like static, but I haven't heard anything else. But the main reason I asked that is because V has been in there sawing away on wooden pendants. So I was like, really weird.
That's so weird, like the coincidence that they're both sawing away. That's funny.
Yep. So I don't know.
Guys in their wood sawing.
Bless their heart.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta love them though. Love them to death.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely been a pleasure. And
yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Right.
Yeah, because like we see the stuff on movies, a lot of the case files we know of are turned into movies, and I feel like people kind of like disassociate like it actually being real to something that's fake because they automatically see something on a movie and they're like, oh, okay, that's bullshit. They're just doing it for like drama and to get people to watch the movie. But like this shit, like, where do you think the movies got the ideas from? Like, from real cases. And so bringing like Sandy and you on here, I feel like it makes it more personal and more real. I mean, it is real, but it makes, people feel that the realness.
Right. Right. And
Yeah.
this is the closest that we, with what we've experienced over the last 2 years, this is some of the closest connections we can have with people. And now, well, fortunately, that's not the same, but, living in other states like we do and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's really important to have community with this.
Yes.
Really important to have that support and, finding somebody that you can either learn from or look up to, or when you get to the point where you feel like you can handle your own, to share your knowledge, because to me, that's another thing, like working with spirit. They want, I say they, but the divine God, they want you to share that experience so other people can get back more to the loving side of life in the best way. So it's awesome, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. Like, I go through things and I have visions, but you know what? I've helped a lot of people get through some stuff, and it's life changing, and I'm not trying to be a messiah or a prophet. I'm just repeating what, spirit tells me. I'm repeating what I trusting your gut. So yes,
Yeah.
and if you have any more questions for me or anything.
All right. How about, I mean, you answered everything. How about this? If there's one main thing you could take away, like one piece of advice you can give, what would it be?
One piece of advice, the everything or the demonic?
I would say anything.
Okay. Trust your instincts. Trust your intuition. Trust in the divine. I mean, same thing, all said different.
Yeah.
That is probably the most relevant for people. That would probably resonate with people the most, is trust your gut, trust your intuition.
Yeah.
Don't lie. Even if, and this is a little more, but I just an extra tidbit. We all have abilities. Like, we all have these capabilities, just different levels of them, and we're all at different levels of our soul growth. Just trust your gut. That's
absolutely. I agree. So we are cutting in like 2 hours almost. That's okay.
We can do it.
But I think we're gonna cut it here because I think we got through everything. Like, I have my little index card just to keep track of the questions, and you answered them pretty good. So
I think I ramble. I'm sorry, but
no, you're good. You're good.
Each experience was relevant to the story, and I felt like if I left experiences out, like I'm sure it would have still made sense, but it captured like years.
No, you don't even have to defend yourself. Like, it's fine. Like, I'm probably gonna turn it into a 2-parter anyway. So
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I'll have it posted up on Patreon immediately once it's once I can get it uploaded, because I have to upload it onto YouTube first and then have it unlisted and then put the link in on Patreon. So I gotta wait for that to, do that. But yeah, so thank you so much for chatting with me, chatting with everybody. But yeah, we will talk later, obviously.
Sounds
But yeah,
good.
yeah. So everyone who watched this video, thank you so much for sticking around. But yeah, I hope to see you guys soon, and peace out.